What I'm going to talk about today is about malware and anti-malware, or malware and anti-malware solution mainly from the computer science angle. And there are several topics that I want to break down the talk to first answer everybody. First, what is malware? Let's go ahead and define it. Also, we'll talk about several classifications of malware. And then we'll talk about why malware, why we have individuals or software engineers writing malware. Then we'll talk about malware infection methods, so how malware really propagates, so very common, or at least a few, and we'll investigate a few ways of how malware infect. And then we'll talk about some malware detection techniques and their challenges, and what are the challenges to go ahead and detect those. And then also we'll look at a few real-life samples that we check in our lab that we can show to you how malware was detected or was not detected by specific malware. And then we'll also talk about some current trend in the industry. So before we begin, does anybody know what's the meaning of malware? What's kind of the definition of the word? Ideas?
The word that's not good, that's
What's
bad.
that?
The software with the wrong intentions.
What's that?
The software with the bad intentions, yeah.
Software with bad intention, that's good. Some more. Malware. What's this word malware?
Malicious software.
You got it. So first, malicious software. So really very much the definition. And then what's the definition of malware? So if you're looking at really software that intends to harm. Now let's take it from the CS angle. What does it mean to harm? What does it mean? That's kind of it's a very vague definition, right? So software that pretty much is intended to damage or to create some sort of damage, and sometimes the damage is propagation. So and the various malware or items that are classified as malware, they are not causing any damage. They're just simply propagating. And yeah, maybe the damage they're doing is just consuming bandwidth, or maybe we can call that as damage. And then, in terms of, there are many types of malware. So there is worm, there is obviously a Trojan product, there are viruses, there are rogue antivirus, scareware, ransom, and many others. So let's go over a little bit about definition. So before we go over, so first, worm. Does anybody know what is worm? What's the kind of the definition of worm? What is a worm?
Something that's sneaky.
Something to think, yeah, let's kind of think about, okay, snaking, what else? Worm? Example of internet worm? Anybody? So first, it makes copy for itself. The goal of worm is purely to propagate. So I would say out of all of the malware, worms are not necessarily creating or intending to create any damage. They are propagating. And the interesting thing about the worms is that they do not need any human intervention to necessarily propagate. So they just continue to propagate, and there are ways that malware we can imagine, there are ways that, such as local drives, such as USB drives. So for example, you can go ahead and propagate over a USB drive. So does anybody know what is autorun.inf? Autorun.inf on the USB drive. Does anybody ever open the USB drive?
Yeah.
It's more instruction to the operating system, go and execute these commands once you install the USB. So think about it. If you go ahead and do that, you can go ahead and take an application from the USB drive and then execute that to another command that will go ahead and propagate to other elements. Or network shares. So if theoretically a malware will look for all of the network shares, just copy itself to a network share, assuming that this network share will go and propagate to other network shares. Now you got yourself a worm. The beautiful one will be how can it auto-propagate? How can you force a worm to auto-propagate and get itself to a system to auto-run and to make it auto-run? And there is pretty much one purpose for a worm, just propagate. One example, I Love You Worm. Does anybody hear about I Love You Worm? It was very famous in 2001. I Love You Worm came by email. Okay. What do you hear about it?
You get some email like stating I love you, and if you click on that link, it just
Yeah, so you got it. So it's correct. So you got an email. So after you got the email, what you click on the email, okay, you click the email. And after you click the email, what it does, it takes your first 50 contacts at your email, at your of your Outlook. And after it takes the first 50 contacts of your Outlook, just enumerate those, and then start sending itself to all of these 50, all of these 50. And you can get the source code. By the way, the source code is very, very, very simple. You just go over. It's a VBS script. It's a very basic. It infected something like 10 million machines. So it was very. Does anybody hear about Robert Morris? First internet worm, 1988. He's 47 now, so it's not kind of. He's not young. However, he invented the first kind of, if there is anything on the record of the first internet worm, it's called the Morris worm. The interesting thing about the first internet worm, in 1988, there haven't been that many machines connected to the internet, and by creating this worm, it infected 10% of the internet traffic, which was remarkable. So he did. He's a professor in MIT. I work with the guy. What really helped him out is his dad was working for the NSA, the big shot in the NSA, so he was still in trouble and he served on that, though not too much. So he did a really, really nice thing. So his original goal of creating this wall was to map the internet. So that was his goal. And what he did, he created several subroutines, and anybody can read it. If you Google Morris worm, I'm sure that you go and find it, you can read more about it. So what he does, it initialized, and after that, the do it is another subroutine that you put together. The do it, one of the nice things about the do it, it didn't always explode. So it didn't always explode to report back about its location. And by doing it, there's some randomization. It really helped. It was really challenging to after that shut down this wall. Also, the infection was if some of you know Linux and you know the etc password, so it cracked the etc password by the infection and the cracking. And by doing that, propagated using finger and some other options to other systems. So it was a true internet worm. It didn't require any human intervention to go ahead and propagate. Okay, next, Trojan Hosts. Anybody knows what is a Trojan Host? Somebody else, you know everything. You also know everything. It's like, anybody else? Okay, go back to you. What's your name?
It's Sonia.
Sonia, let's go back to Sonia.
So I also got impacted by this, my machine basically got impacted by this virus. So probably it was able to hack the system or get some secure information out of the system. Like I got it through some pen drive. And I did not know what it is. Somebody told me that if you have this on the system, your secret information, your passwords, they all can be, tracked by somebody.
Okay, I think we're almost there. So, what's your name?
Ayush.
Ayush.
It comes embedded with non-malicious programs and then infects your computer thereby.
Right, so you got it. So anybody saw the movie Troy? It's based on somewhat of a true story, yes. Okay, so what was the big thing with the Trojan Host? What was the Trojan Host?
Yeah, it was hiding the people.
It was like a gift, right?
Yeah.
You want to get this gift. You want to get this statue.
Yeah.
Or in the statue you get the bad stuff. So the analogy for Trojan Host is that you download software that you want to use. So you go ahead and you want to play with a game, you want to get a crack to get a game, it's for free, right? You want to get something like a software from a friend, you want to get a codec to see a video. However, you're not getting that, you're getting something, in addition to that, you get another virus that's going to go and do some malicious stuff. So the activity would be pretty much appearing to perform something that you'd like it to do, however, there's something else hidden inside. And the purpose is pretty much gain privilege. It's very common. It's going to be put together with the backdoor. And I give you two examples. The first example of Trojan Host is NetBus. I got in trouble for this for researching that. So you install a game. Pretty much it comes with, if you say whack-a-mole, if you actually come up with whack-a-mole and you want to play with the game. However, the game also install a backdoor to the system. Using the backdoor, you can pretty much completely manage a remote system. Same happen also on Mac. You want to install a browser plugin to go and watch a codecs or to see some videos or movies that are encoded. And what you get flashback, which is pretty much redirect you to really bogus bad website to generate back traffic from advertisement. So let's go to a virus. So what is a virus? What's the difference between a virus and a worm? Anybody can guess? So if a worm does not necessarily need to have any user interaction to propagate, what will a virus have?
It requires user interaction.
You got it, user interaction. So that's pretty much the gist of it. So you expect it to go and click it, and after you go and click it, so it's just going to be on some hidden files, you go and click it, and once you click it, boom, you got virus, you got infected. So you just kind of hidden viruses out there, you go and touch them, and after that, so when executed, usually by human, it replicates. And the purpose is replicate, virus replicate, and also harm computers. So let's go to the next one, and we have two more to go over that are pretty common. Rogue antivirus or scareware. Rogue antivirus, like it sounds. Ideas, anybody?
Just a fake antivirus is sometimes just pop up and say you've been infected and scan the computer.
You got it.
They actually have bad intentions.
You got it. So rogue antivirus application, what it does, very nice. It presents to be an antivirus. So it markets itself, oh, I'm semantic presetting. Could be a really nicely and polished website. What it's going to do, it's going to install itself. Initially, it's going to be on like a tray icon. It's going to look like your normal antivirus, or however, what's going to do, it's going to actually be a virus. It's going to propagate. It's going to be very, really hard to uninstall. And also, it's going to try and convince you that you do have a virus, although you don't have, and trying to convince you to pay this specific rogue antivirus and then to go and remove the virus. And then there is a whole battle right now in the industry of the antivirus market, which means what is an antivirus? Because some of this rogue antivirus application does detect some viruses. However, what would be the quantity? How can you measure that's truly a true antivirus? Is something that, because where's the border? Where's the line? Is it like 5 viruses that this rogue antivirus detects and really alert, and then it becomes a non-rogue antivirus? And then it comes pretty much standards around it. The rogue antivirus is something that is very common now and is actually pretty successful propagating. Antivirus 360 was a nightmare for many IT. Got millions of installations. Was a big issue. Part of that is that it was really hard to uninstall this solution. And then let's go to ransomware. So ransomware, exactly like it sounds. What it does, it restricts access to the machine. Pretty much after you install ransomware, it locks the machine. Typically, it encrypts some sensitive files. Put together a lock message on the machine itself, and then what you get a phone number, or you need to put together a credit card, and after that you get the ransomware. You need to go in and pay, and after that, the specific group that's going to stand behind this ransomware will go ahead, unlock your files, assuming they got the funds. So this is one interesting. That's the Department of Justice malware, and this is how it sounds. Then you get a message from the Department of Justice that they locked down your machine. It looks very legit. They will have the logo and everything. They are investing, by the way, I would say multiple R&D cycles to go and put that, even graphic designers to go ahead and put that in place. Lock down your machine, and then you need to call a phone number, guys in Russia, over a Skype line. Ta-da. And obviously there are others. In terms of quantity of malware, so quantity of malware is something that's very hard to go and define. So we've seen that there are many types of malware. We just went over like 5 types. And however, whenever we're going to go and quantify the amount of malware out there, it's a pretty tough job, because if you're looking at the multiple vendors and the way that they put together, okay, how many viruses are out there, it's very hard to come up with a concrete number. A part of that, there is no standard in the industry how to measure, how to count malware, how to classify malware. And sometimes specific malware can be classified as 3 different malwares by one vendor and 5 by another. So this is a group based in Germany that what they do is the certified antiviruses for their quality, and they put it together. It's close to 160 million viruses out there. In terms of the propagation rate, we see that also the amount of viruses, the quantity of viruses out there keep increasing in an exponential way. And the expectation is that there's going to be a tipping point of there's going to be more malware than clean files. So if we go with this existing rate, we do expect that to exceed pretty soon. Okay, so we went over malware, and we saw there are many of them. And also I hinted, okay, why malware writing malware? So let's try to classify why software engineers like you, sometimes sitting on your teams of 8, 5, 10, 20, are writing malware. Any ideas? We talked about some of them. Money. Economical reasons, right? Money. Drives the world, right? What else?
Fun.
What's that?
Fun.
Fun. That's a good one. Social one, fun. More reasons?
Black hat,
What's that?
hacker, black hat,
Defiance.
Black hat, maybe prestige.
try to get the credit card number or something.
Yeah, that would be economical, right? So getting critical, hackers, black hat, right? To get the prestige, right? Which would also be. More reasons?
Yeah, to get some information from the competitive companies. Like if they have some competitors in the market, then they try to get into their company's information or something.
Industrial espionage, that also put it under economical reasons, right? More reasons, think about it was in the news with Iran and so on. Think about that.
Politics.
That's political reasons.
Maybe to retrieve confidential information.
Confidential information, right, from either countries, which may be a political, maybe a cyber weapon. So if we're looking at reasons, there are multiple reasons for malware right to write. Our first one, I would say, economical, in terms of, it's a big, I would say that there was a team recently was catched in South America, like 8 guys. They put together in 9 months, $110 million in just phishing attacks on banks. Really nice, think about it. It's better ROI on many software companies. 8 guys, 110 million, it's a really nice exit. Think about that from that angle. Personal reasons, and then there would be many personal reasons to go ahead and do that, would be maybe the prestige or the revenge and political cyber weapons. So let's go over the economical reasons. So stealing sensitive information, which is after that sold in the black market. So you got some credit card numbers, you can go to a site and go and sell those. Ransomware, we already went and defined what is ransomware. We lock somebody's machine, okay, then through PayPal you can go and unlock it. Obviously PayPal cooperate with the law enforcement over steal. And then it's industrial espionage to go, and then sell bots. What does it mean to sell bots? So what you see here is actually it's a true picture. You can go ahead actually and buy bots. You can buy hacked machines, and there is actually a market for it. If you know where to go to, and you can go and buy it, and then somebody says, oh, I have 5,000 bots. You can go ahead and buy 5,000 bots. You want to control 5,000 machines. Why should somebody go and buy 5,000 bots? Because if you want to go and do a phishing attack on a bank, and to send the spam emails to all of your customers, and after that post phishing, you need this machine, this farm of machine that you can control fully. So there's a whole market for that, and then a whole ecosystem around this bot. Or if you want to go and shut down, or you want to do a denial of service on a specific site, or you want to shut down something, you can use these bots to do whatever. And I would say personal reasons would be revenge. Somebody was let go from a company. Let's put together a backdoor there that's going to take these guys down. Some jealous boyfriend on his girlfriend hacked her Facebook account, right? Maybe shut down the Facebook account and make her enemies with her best friends. I would say vandalism as well. And I would say experimental research. Look at Robert Morris. The guy did not mean to, at least he says, he didn't claim to really take down the internet in 1988. However, still, it was really very much a research. And then I would say hobby and art, which okay, let's do a cool thing. That from experience, you can get in trouble to that. And then let's go over the political reasons. So did anybody hear about what is Stuxnet virus? Yeah.
There was the U.S. government, a virus that they put on a flash drive, and I believe just left in an Iranian nuclear facility's cafeteria. Someone plugged it into a system, and it started I forgot the machines that create the nuclear material, they started running them at different speeds to burn them out sooner than they would otherwise.
So you got it. So the Stuxnet was a spy tool confirmed by the Iranians to create damages to their centrifuges. So and the way it was, a pretty sophisticated malware. Estimated around 100 people worked on this one. Cooperation between, talking about cooperation between the United States and Israel. And indeed created damage. A recent related malware was actually on SBBA, which is a committee that was put together, that is actually claimed to be by the Iranians, that are infected a network that was claimed to come over and go and monitor the Iranians. So it goes both sides. And also, if it does, did anybody hear about the Flame, the virus Flame? Okay, Flame, another virus, also made in USA. So it was deployed in many foreign countries, and the goal of this virus was to spy. So pretty much it opened up the webcam on specific systems, it listened to microphones, it was several giant command and controls. Kaspersky Labs, an antivirus company, Russian antivirus company, detected it recently. And then would be, I would say, sabotage infrastructure, which means to take down infrastructure, spy tools, and also political messages. So during campaigns, you can see these viruses going on. So if you see the recent election, you saw some viruses related to that, which means vote to X or vote to Y. I'm not gonna get pictures of those, though you can search the web for that. They're not flattering anybody. Let's talk about some malware propagation techniques. So in terms of samples of malware propagation, maybe before we go over that, we can see that there are various ways for malware to propagate. So whether it's exploiting patches, so it's a very popular one to go ahead and propagate. So if there is a vulnerability in open port, if there is a vulnerability in software patch, which means buffer overflow can be easily transferred to a vulnerability itself. If you guys would be interested, we can go more into details on that. I can see that there's another goes how to leverage buffer overflow to gain control on systems. And it's related how the stack works. Whenever you have a buffer overflow, whenever a process crash, you can actually leverage it to gain access to the kernel. And then torrent and peer-to-peer applications. So that's also another infection, another vector. Email spread, USB, and rogue security programs. What you see here is I put together a very simple USB virus, so you can actually try it yourself. And it's very easy to go ahead and write. So, for example, you can put together AutoInf and play with AutoInf and use that as a potential virus can create yourself. So let's talk about a few ways that virus actually propagates. So virus propagates, there are many ways that virus can actually propagate on the system. Yes?
I've never seen a virus infect MacBooks. Why is that?
So there are many viruses on Mac. So if you and I'll leave more room for questions maybe later on. So on Mac, there is definitely viruses on Mac, and one of the examples I showed previously together with the Trojan, Flashback is a very common virus that infects over 16,000 machines on Mac. And the reason you don't hear that so much is because still the market share of Macs themselves is still smaller than Windows. And because of the reasons of malware proprietors are initially economical, they're looking at their potential market. So like any other marketer. So if you want to go and sell McDonald's, right? You go ahead and you see, okay, who is going to go and buy McDonald's? So you go and shift the menu on McDonald's because the audience will want X or Y. So still Mac, if you compare that the Macs to PCs, you have many more PCs. So number one, the malware writers, targeting the Windows. Number two, the way, the usability of Mac, to put together Mac in terms of to infect Mac. By definition, UAC is always on. You're not really running as admin on the Unix system. So there is, I would say, a little bit better secure by design. I would say design of the operating system. However, still, I think with the right attention, if you put enough attention on Mac, then you can use Mac as definitely a vector for propagate. Many install Java on Macs, and you can still put together some Java and use that as a vector. Browser plugin is another vector. And you can see multiple examples of infections that are happening on Mac. Maybe another related question is that you should say why you can find many viruses on iPhone, so at least we can get to that. And over that, I can have maybe another whole discussion why this did not happen yet, though with the right attention, it will. So let's continue to talk about viruses. And in terms of virus infection, I'm going to just talk about pending viruses, pre-pending viruses, cavity viruses, compressing viruses, and also a little bit about packers. So first, a pending virus. Pending virus. So if you're looking at the whole code, whenever you have any executable, or any Windows executable, or Mac executable, or any Unix executable, then whenever you have the header, in the header, typically you have the PE, the protocol is executable, and you have additional parameters related to the process itself. What you can do is you can do a jump to the virus code after the virus code is done, doing the propagation. Doing that, you can actually go into the rest of the application. So theoretically, this system could be infected, the infection could continue, and then the system will continue to operate. The second one is pre-pending. It's very similar to that. It's a little bit harder to write this virus just because you need to go and push the rest of the code down there. So what you need to do is actually get the rest and actually change the binary in order to go ahead and do that. So in a different way, instead of appending to the end of the file, you need to, and adding just one jump, then you need to go ahead and push the whole thing. Another one is a cavity virus. So cavity virus. So whenever you're looking at the whole kind of assembly code that you need to go ahead and execute, you can find holes. It really depends how the compiler works. So if you can find actually some place in your code that you can actually go and write and inject your assembly code, you can actually go and put that together. That's called cavity, and then you can actually get anything executed. So it really depends on the executable. And if you're looking at the advantages and disadvantages, so many antiviruses will go ahead and actually look at the end or the beginning or the prefix of or the end of the viruses. That would be, I would say, the beginning of the virus is going to be very easy to go and check. It's very close to the P header. Same is the end, because you actually go and look at a specific one. Whenever you have a cavity virus, antiviruses is going to be just harder to go and find this section. So if we're looking at additional if you look at a little bit more ways that viruses are trying to hide themselves, you also add a decompressor to the viruses themselves, and you can see more and more of those, which makes the antivirus much harder. And then something else that we start seeing happening in the field recently is packers. And packers, that's becoming a really, really interesting and really challenging thing to go and detect, because first, packers, so they have a specific way to go and encode the whole file. There is the malware itself, and also there is, after that, the inspected hot executable that actually need to go and run some stuff. So it is compressed, it is encrypted. Some of the code itself is randomized. So for example, what you can go ahead and randomize some calls, so especially once you have the raw assembly lines, you can go ahead and mesh those in a way that is going to be very hard. But sometimes you add junk, and also you add some technology to do anti-VM, so this packer will not be able to explode on the virtual machine. And the reason for that it will not be able to go and run a virtual machine is because the malware writers knows that the malware analyzers, that the antivirus companies are going to run this malware in a virtual machine. So in order to anti-detect, they already know what are the tools that the malware analyzers are going to use. So, pretty interesting. Fred Cohen. Did anybody hear about Fred Cohen? Okay, so Fred Cohen, he put together research. I can actually Google his name and find out. So he was very innovative in his field. He put together a research paper that was published and reviewed, very much the first one that defined what is malware. He also has proved that malware is pretty hard and complete. You can actually go ahead, I'll share with you the slides. You can go ahead and press this link, and you can see the whole proof. So if you really pretty much think about it, it's the argument is very simple. If you got the perfect antivirus solution, you can assume that the antivirus will be able to call it. And whenever we look at the packers, it's one example. How many? It's always an arm race, and the arm race is always going to be okay, fine. So the technology of the antimalware is always going to be open. Let's go back to the iOS, and why we don't really find iOS is because whenever you need to go ahead and submit an application to Apple, what do?
Password.
What's that?
Password.
Well, password before you install it, or it's something else. However, you submit it to Apple and you don't know.
It scans it for.
Scan. So if somebody would go ahead and detect what Apple is actually doing to the application before they put it in the App Store, you go ahead.
But if that was so simple, why would Microsoft not do it?
That's a different story. I can talk to you about more commercial reasons about open or closed. And I would say, and I would say sometimes security by pretty much the Apple is very secretive about, okay, what's the process they're actually going and doing. However, it's crackable. It's a matter of time and attention. So detecting malware. So detecting malware, we already understand it. It's a pretty tough thing, right? And then there is kind of two things about kind of detecting malware. I would say static and dynamic. And whenever we're looking at malware, we need to think about known malware and unknown malware, right? So what is known malware? Known malware is malware that is already out there. We know that it's there. So there are a bunch of challenges to go and detect known malware. Why is that? Why we have challenges? Because there are a lot of malware, 160 million viruses out there. Think about from the CS. What is the database size you need to go and detect 160? What's going to be your performance? How are you going to go and update this virus? If you have 200,000 new viruses a day, how can you go and create an update mechanism so you're going to be up to date every day, right? So to go and create a system to protect against known malware, it's not, even if it's known, it's not so trivial. Yes, I know this virus. How you go ahead and create a system to go ahead and detect against it. So, and then you have several things. You have in the wild, which is pretty much if you can actually go and read more about it if you want to Google in the wild. It's more of a system that all of the antivirus pretty much can share. It's in the wild, so everybody knows about it. Second, there are systems, so all of that, many of the antivirus vendors are actually sharing samples between each other. And then there's MTSO real-time threat, which is a new initiative by MTSO. MTSO is an organization incorporated here in San Francisco, and their goal is to create standards to go and measure what does it define, how can you test an antivirus. So they put together an initiative real-time threat list, which means every time there is trying to create a system that nearly real time, whenever something new is out, everybody knows about it. What is unknown malware? Then you have targeted attacks, which means you want to go and target the organization. The signature doesn't exist. One example for that, real life example. So I'm talking about a CEO of a company. They track his Facebook account, and they figure out that he went to vacation. And after he went to vacation, they know exactly when he went to vacation because they track the pictures. So after that, they send him an email and send him, oh, we know that you went to the Caribbean on this specific date. So they already spoofed the name of his friend, actually go ahead and send, hey, click here to get pictures that we got from this specific event. So from that social event, oh, it has to be somebody I know. Why? Because they already tracked the Facebook. And also they go ahead and knew that they've been there. Oh, it must be trusted, right? Let's open up this executable. Boom, targeted attack, all financial records has been retrieved by the attackers. And then outbreaks. Outbreaks means a new virus is out there. Nobody knows about this virus. Nobody created a signature for this virus. There is no algorithm out there that actually could go ahead and predict this virus because this virus writer actually understood all of the algorithms of all of the antivirus vendors. You have an outbreak, you want to create a signature for that, go ahead and actually go and create detection against this unknown malware. So this would be the two kind of things that what actually are happening in the industry, static versus dynamic. And another thing that's actually happening in the industry is static inspection and dynamic inspection. And static inspection and dynamic inspection means, as it sounds, static means you're not executing the code. You want actually to go, you get this set of assembly lines of code. You want to go over the assembly line of code and go and see, okay, is it harmful or not? What are the chances these specific lines of assembly, those are harmful, which one or not? Then you have the dynamic. Dynamic means, okay, let this executable run, and then let's see what happens. Let's see what happens. It's going to infect or not whenever we're going to go ahead and do the analysis of those. So, anybody has ideas? How can we check a file statically that it's a virus or not? Anybody has ideas?
Like if it has a weird extension,
Say again?
like if it has a weird extension,
A weird extension such as?
any extension, AXM or
ABCD.
like, yeah, like if it is an unknown file and which is actually not shown by any of these software.
A weird extension could be, and I would say a weird extension would be typically a delivery of a virus. So whenever sometimes you have viruses that create some weird files together with them, that could be one by creation of a weird extension. Most static analysis, let's talk about static analysis. Let's think about it now. You have a challenge. You're getting a file. You need to make a decision, is it a virus or not by
Check.
running it.
Check for known signatures.
Great. Hash lookup. Great. What's one way? Go and check for hash. More examples. Maybe somebody here can think about something new that nobody thought about. Dependencies. Can you check the dependency of a file of an executable? That's one option. Does anybody know what is the PE header? Portable executable header, Win32. So every time, you know many things about the compiler, who is the writer, and all of the information about the compiler is there. You can actually go and check that. Digital signatures, anybody know what is digital signature? Okay. Who signed this one? Is it signed by Microsoft? Is it signed by Mozilla? Is it signed by Oracle? Is it signed by Jojo? It's not signed by anybody. Okay, so actually go and put that together. But the digital signatures are being stolen. So I would say PEDR digital signature text searches, so actually go for text searches inside the file. Hash checks, that would be just do the hash of the whole file. Dependency checks, if there are specific DLLs. Check for packers, actually you can go ahead and see if something is specific, and then heuristic checks on the code itself. And then in terms of the challenges in terms of static code analysis is, first, you have over 100 million signatures, big data, performance. And then there are many signature updates. And it's very easy to obfuscate the code. And I'll give you an example. Let's take a look at this assembly code. So that's actually a real virus, actually a setup of a virus that was the true analysis of a virus. And actually, if you had no operands between the assembly codes, you change the signatures. You'll be surprised how many antiviruses will not be able to detect a virus if you just add no operands to it. And then the third one would be jumps. So pretty much you can have the same thing, just with jumps. It's very kind of easy to program around it and create something. And or you can go the whole way and just do a whole kind of randomization of the code to a point that it's going to be very, very difficult to go and detect what this application will be doing. As you can understand, compilers can actually go and do that, right? So compilers, optimizers, I would say research around that could be it's at least one lead to go ahead and perform research, to go and optimize and do additional static code analysis. So dynamic code analysis. So whenever we're talking about dynamic code analysis, then you have pretty much two options to go and run the code. You can either run the application on the targeted host that you want to check. So for example, all of the antivirus, if you're running an antivirus, it has dynamic code analysis. Whenever you go and execute, most of the common antiviruses you get now, whether it's even the free one, has dynamic code analysis. What it does, you let something execute, and after that, what it does in real time, you see, okay, what is executable it does. Does it go to this specific website? Does it go to specific traffic? Is it going to create additional files? Is it going to go and call additional processes? Is it going to go and call the USB and actually go and monitor that? However, it can do that either on the machine itself you're trying to protect, or you're going to do it on a virtual machine, whenever you're doing dynamic analysis. And even whenever you're going and doing this analysis on a virtual machine, you can actually either monitor the virtual machine inside the virtual machine, or you can actually monitor the virtual machine externally. And if you monitor the virtual machine externally, you can actually see, okay, how the operating system changed, and based on that, make a decision it's a virus or not. And in terms of monitoring, whenever you do dynamic analysis, then you can go ahead pretty much for everything, processes, files, registry checks, system scheduling, services, daemons, and then network traffic. And network traffic could be either type or destination. So if you have a bot, typically it's going to specific and very known IPs. If you look at Zeus, it's a very known bot that is out there. There is a website that go and tracks the IPs of Zeus as they go ahead and propagate them. If you go and Google Zeus tracker. So let's think about what would be the challenges of dynamic code analysis. So theoretically, I mean, it sounds like it's easier to do dynamic code analysis. So still a bunch of challenges, right? So let's think about challenges. What would be the challenge for us to go in and write a dynamic code analysis? Anybody can think about something?
False positives.
False positive, very big one. And over time in heuristics, false positive, big issue. That's a great one. You go ahead and create a process, false positive or it's not, because you cannot define, it's not really hash that you really know. Right. More challenges?
Accidental execution of the malicious code.
That's correct as well. That's how to protect, because to go ahead and do a dynamic code analysis, you need to really create a lab to go ahead and actually protect yourself from being infected, right? So that's creating a lab and resources. I would put that together with resources. What else? Dynamic code analysis. Let's say that you have an executable suspicious, you want to run it and decide it's a virus or not, and you're trying to do it systematically. What would be your challenges? How would you do it?
I mean, it's hard to figure out what if the user itself wants to delete files, and I mean, it's hard to determine whether it's a legitimate action by the user or illegitimate.
You are correct. It's very, very hard to define what is malicious. So, and then in addition to that, malware has anti-virtualization techniques, as I mentioned. So I met with an IBM researcher recently. That was in one of the, I think, the network security conference, and he told me, oh, I'm looking at this specific sober malware, and I just don't get it. It doesn't execute on me on VMware, or it executes for me on Citrix virtual system. Why do you think it happened?
I think VMware has a layer like what you're talking about. That layer which actually knows what is unknown or something.
I mean, probably OS has more security, but virtual has less security than the underlying OS. And
it would be pretty identical. Actually, the reason for that was much more historical than real life, because Sober was developed by the virus writer in 2002. 2002, VMware was out there, Citrix VM was not out there. So whenever the virus writers wrote it, they knew that VMware technology is out there, most likely tested on virtual machine. However, 2004, Citrix came with their own virtual technology, so pretty much yes, so the virus was okay. Just exploded. So the researcher was able to go ahead and detect this virus on Citrix and not on not VMware. And also you have some other very easy way to go and hide itself, such as sleep. So for example, the virus itself does not have, you're not going to go and do analysis on this application forever. And if you hide sleep, so you have some loops and you pretty much wait before you go and explode or wait to a specific date. Also you got it, right? Randomization. Also sometimes execute, sometimes don't execute. For example, Robert Morris, he executed once out of 7 times. Go and figure it out. Actually 1 out of 7 he didn't execute. So it's another way. So, okay, I'm going to run or not. So you can't tell. So for example, you get this kind of executable, you run it, and then you never know if it's going to happen or not. Depends on the day that you get. And polymorphism, which means what polymorphism? Does anybody know what is polymorphism?
Is it like an object-oriented topic?
Somewhat, yes.
Having many forms.
What's that?
Having many forms.
Having many forms are changing itself. So actually, whenever you have the virus here, so whenever the virus propagates, it's changing itself, adding a signature, adding a job, adding an operand, doing additional randomization of the code. Boom, you got a new signature. Go and find it. So I Love You, I went it on I Love You virus. It was so immediately after I Love You virus was a big thing. Then immediately after that was a new virus, a new I Love You virus. So pretty much take the code I Love You virus and just have it with polymorphism, and boom, another hit on the whole internet. So that's another one. And then consume resources. To go ahead and do dynamic code analysis, you need to go and run it. Think about what happens if your organization get 1 million files a day. You need to get with 1 million files and then must run each one of them in a virtual machine. How many machines you need to go and run each one of them and wait to see how it executes? And then revert the operating system back to the original state. Go and do that. So, before we go to some real-life examples of that which we took from our lab, any questions on just viruses? Okay. So let's look for some real-life examples, and actually we did some of those. So what you see here, we actually analyzed 3 viruses submitted to Metascan Online. Metascan Online, we have 4 different antivirus running on the same system, and we have like thousands of users just going to this website, taking file, uploading the file to Metascan Online, and then sometimes we see outbreaks. Actually, we see outbreaks every day. We see many outbreaks. We see, I would say, dozens, maybe hundreds of outbreaks happening every day. We're pretty much not displaying those. So we just took these 3 different viruses out there, and then you can see each one of the antivirus, and then when they detect the virus in day 0 and day 1. So you can see how the industry goes and reacts to viruses out there. So this is one example. You can see the efficiency out there. Another way you can go and see what we have here is the amount of engines infected, and then how many days it takes for the whole industry to go ahead and align by malware sharing. One more thing that also we're doing with Metascan Online, we are also sharing and actually taking this information and sharing it with all of the antivirus vendors. So out of the 44 engines that participate in Metascan Online, actually we send samples to around 40 of those. So every time one do not, actually we're trying to go and fix it. Or it takes them time to go validate, it takes them time to go and put it together. And also, think about the quality assurance challenge. You want to release signature file out there. You have 160. Your regression is 160 signatures, 6 million signatures. And sometimes the signatures are not as complex as, here's the hash. Sometimes the signatures are more complex. If you get this registry key, look for this hash, and if not, look for that hash. So also the quality assurance challenge is huge, which means you have pretty much several systems, and you're pretty much trying to do. So this will actually get you a sense of what's the quality of security solutions out there. Another thing that we also did recently, so the Metascan and Tony Tail that you see here, another research they put together, they try to compare between static analysis to dynamic analysis, because some could say, oh, dynamic is better than static, static is better than dynamic. So what you see here is we took Office documents, viruses related to Office, and also to documents that are, I would say, higher likely to be detected in a dynamic analysis. You can go and argue, oh, if there is a macro virus inside the wall, it's going to be easier to go and detect the behavior because you can predict that Office should not be opening an email and so on. However, and then, so we did some static analysis, of course, using many antivirus engines, and you can see that out of the 43 engines, it was pretty much almost never that more than 25 detected that as a virus. And then we also ran it using several commercial sandboxes, which is Checkpoint, Retrax, and then Threat Expert, you can actually go and see that. And you can see that there is, sometimes sandboxes detected viruses, that static analysis, and sometimes not. It's very hard to say what is better for a specific goal. However, we do see some correlation. We do see that actually using them together makes better sense, and we do see pro and cons for each one in real-life examples. So if you're looking at the total amount of threats out there, and you see virus static analysis and dynamic analysis, then you can see that the amount of viruses that there wouldn't be ever protection against them. So this is about malware and viruses, and a little bit trend in the industry, or at least things that we see now in the industry, or at least pretty warm in the industry, is all of the industry is going to cloud and cloud deliveries, and you can see a lot of cloud. Okay, this application is going from hosted to cloud, you're going to do that. So you see more and more technologies protecting cloud applications. So you can see more and more security applications that go and protect, for example, Box or Dropbox and access to these files. or if there's banking application, small application, and protect the connection between your endpoint in the house to the banking application. And then second would be mobile security and bring your own device. So these cell phones and also the security around those. So you want to bring this device to an organization. You see more and more trends around how you make sure that this device is not infected, or not necessarily infected, does not impose any security risks. For example, password lock. So you want to make sure that the password is locked before trying to log it to the system. Just because this machine is stolen, and everybody can go and access the email, corporate email, that's a big security issue. The third one, I would say, cloud malware scanning. And then in cloud malware scanner, there is big data, and the very issue of the big data, and then performance. How you go and do this distributed computing together with big data, actually to work efficiently. And you see more and more training in the industry and security industry in that area. And then sandboxing. Sandboxing, you can find many kind of companies going in the cloud, and many companies sandboxing, many kind of on static. That's excuse this typo. Static. The recent IPO in that area was FireEye. The IPO went out several months ago. It's a $5 billion company, so that's one of the leaders in that space. And then protecting digital wallets. So you see that there are more and more digital wallets out there, and so you see more and more technologies around how to go ahead and protect digital wallets, and we are pretty much aware of those, and we also partner with companies in that space.